What's up, Guru Nation? Welcome back to the clinicaltrialsguru.com. I'm here with regular guest Darshan Kulkarni. Darshan is an attorney. He's also a pharmacist. He's a freelancer in this space, the clinical research space. Or do you do all of pharma?
I do most of pharma. I
Yeah,
do everything in the post-IND phase, primarily. I do a lot of stuff in the pre-IND phase as well. But if I had to pull a niche, it would be post-IND.
post IND. Okay, good. So, I mean, you're not only a freelancer, a successful freelancer in the clinical research space, but it's in pretty much all of pharma. Like advertising, I know last time we talked about advertising,
Absolutely.
regulations surrounding that. So, Darshan, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Dan. It's been a while. I'm really excited again.
Yeah, me too. So, this topic was, I guess, inspired by a question I got from a consultant, right? He messaged me on LinkedIn and he asked, hey, how do I get more business for myself? And I said, well, there's a short answer. It's hustle more, do
Right.
more, right? And then I followed that up with, do you want me to interview you on my show? Maybe
Hmm.
it'll help get the word out, right?
Sure.
I didn't hear back from him. So,
Huh.
yeah. So I guess he just was looking for some kind of holy grail for how to get more business, like having clients maybe fall on your head.
Right.
Maybe you push a button and then like some door opens in the ceiling and business starts falling on your
So I
head.
assume that's how this works, Dan. Can you tell me how to get more business too, then?
That's right. That's right. And I even told the guy, hey, if it was that easy, I mean, first of all, you wouldn't be asking me how to do it
Right.
because you'd be too busy doing it.
Right.
And I'm no expert myself. Like, I'm doing okay, but I need to be doing better. And so this is where this conversation comes in. I did a video on it by myself. I took about 10 minutes. It was
Okay.
more of a rant, but I gave like some good suggestions. There's no technical things you can tell people, "Hey, do X amount of this, and then do this, and then
Hmm.
divide that by this, and you're going
Right.
to, there's no such thing, man." And everyone's different. Everyone has different comfort zones. Everyone's better at doing certain things than others. Not everyone wants to do video. That's fine. But guess
Right.
what? Can you write a letter? Can you write an email? Can you pick up the phone and call people?
Right.
Are you going to enough conferences? Are you meeting enough? Like, it's not all video. You don't need to do this, right?
No.
So that's why I wanted to bring you on, Darshan, because you are a successful uh, freelancer, right? Amongst other things, you do a good amount of business for yourself
Hmm.
in this space. And I wanted to bring someone else's perspective on here. And you've done videos, but it's not like you're doing like hundreds of videos a year,
No.
right? I
No.
mean, maybe a dozen, right?
Maybe.
Yeah. So, what are some of the things that you're doing to attract more business for yourself?
Um, I think it's so today's as usual, none of what I'm saying is legal advice and should
Well,
not be construed as such, obviously.
God,
But I
no.
think today's lecture is, or at least today's discussion, I think, is more of a what do each one of us do? And I think, as you're pointing out, each of us do a slightly different thing than every single other person because we all have our different comfort zones. For you, Dan, I think you've been exceptionally successful with the videos. I think you sort of make an effort and put yourself out there all the time. And I think that's great. And that works incredibly well for you. I can admit that because of these videos, I get some work as well. But I think that that is one channel. You've got to find the
Right.
other channels that work for you. I present a lot. In the last quarter, I presented about 12 to 15 times at conferences. I've written chapters for textbooks, multiple textbooks. I'm working with someone to be a regular on their podcast. I have written several articles. I teach at a school at the University of the Sciences as an instructor in the biomedical writing program and in the MBA program. And I guest lecture all over the world on different things. I'm on multiple boards. I'm on the American Bar Association's Life Sciences Interest Group. I think in the end you start finding synergies. For example, I'm trying to do right now a training program and a training program that uses a lot of the stuff I do and converts that and monetizes that in a way that gets recorded and then becomes available for people to learn. That way, that lecture series, instead of it being a one-time thing, becomes a multiple-time thing that can be monetized. But I think the one thing I learned from you, Dan, actually, is that it's often repetition and being in front of people. The one thing I learned from me was that so marketing became a huge thing. I used to, similar to the person you were talking to, I used to truly believe that it was going to be as simple as you choose a niche, and if it's a niche that not many people are doing, clients will just fall out of the
Yeah.
air.
Yeah.
And I really believe that. But the problem is, it's not how it works, because why should clients use you?
Yeah.
I think for what I do, and I have a couple of different niches that I address that are very underserved, but my competition is literally charging 2 to 3 times what I charge, but they are in the largest firms in the world. And some people say you never go wrong by hiring IBM. But I tend to believe that customer service, knowing what you do, having multiple perspectives, is what becomes more important. And that's the side of what I do that, and they're very successful at what they do. I'm successful at what I do. I like to believe that you do what works for you. Um, so you find different methods and different ways and different synergies. I think you and I have found synergies multiple times where
Hmm.
we have these conversations where we've been talking about doing several businesses, and sometimes it's sort of almost worked, and sometimes it hasn't. But I think one of the things that works for us is having those friendships,
Yep.
and that becomes. Um, I think of business as a baby, and to quote Hillary Clinton, it takes a village. You aren't going to be successful by just saying, "Oh, I'm going to have a business and I'm going to be alone and I'm going to be extremely successful." I don't know any entrepreneur who's been successful by being alone. You need to have relationships. One of the things I assume you've spoken a lot about, but that works for me, is having lists. For example, going to these conferences, collecting cards. I know so many people who go to these conferences and they simply just talk to a person for 2 seconds, take their card, move on. Talk to the person, get their card, move on.
Yeah.
And I guess that's one strategy. It's a strategy I tried very early. But what I realized very quickly was that you aren't memorable anymore. And then I had these conversations with 1 or 2 people for hours. I'm talking like 6, 7, 8 hours during a 2 day conference. They became friends. I still talk to them 7, 8 years later, and they're friends to me. And those relationships, they've sent stuff to me, I've sent stuff to them, and it's becoming resources, becoming friends with these people. Um, and I think that's been a very important thing for me. So, how do you become successful? I wish I knew. Just as I think the way you phrased it was beautiful. Hustle,
That's
hustle
it.
as much as I can. I don't use the word hustle to mean something shady.
Right.
I use the word hustle to mean work hard, really hard, and then maybe you have a chance.
Maybe. Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, like 10, there's a book I'm reading, 10x rule. It says
Right.
set your goals 10 times higher than what you want to achieve, right? And then do 10 times the amount of action you think it's going to take to get that because it always takes more, right?
Right.
And he gives the
Right.
example, if I have a product, let's say I have a product, not even a video, right? Just
Right.
I have a product,
Right.
it's going to be free
Right.
and it's 100 times better than other products who are charging money for it. That's
Right.
still going to be hard
Right.
to get to people, right?
Yep. Yep.
So you're charging for your services. I'm charging. This is how you pay your
Absolutely.
bills,
Right.
right? Imagine how much harder that's going to be when you're
Absolutely.
asking someone for money. And I
Right.
think the bottom line is people look at relationships, like you said, when they go to conferences or even just on LinkedIn. I mean, you see how many, I get all these email
Yep.
pitches. You probably get a ton of email pitches
Yep.
where they're just trying to transact with you. They're not trying to give
Right.
you value. You know, they're
Right.
looking at you as a transaction, and you can tell it's a canned email when you
Right.
see it, right?
Right. Right.
And so that kind of marketing, like doing 10 times more of that, is actually going to be worse for you in the long run than if you didn't do
Exactly.
anything,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
So provide value rather than look at people as what value can you give them rather than transaction.
Hmm.
Something I've got to do better at, and you're you're sort of in a hub where there's a lot of pharma companies around you. I am
Yep.
too. We're lucky. I'm here
Yep.
in SoCal. I'm in Orange County in
Right.
SoCal, which is like mini Silicon Valley for biotechs,
Right.
right? I'm surrounded by biotechs I've never even heard of,
Right.
right? I'm
Right.
trying to build my CRO. I have yet, and I need to hustle more. I have
Yep.
yet to go, physically go, knock
Yep.
on their doors and meet with someone.
Yep.
I have yet to do that. It's something, it's been on my list of things to do. I've been busy. I've been putting it off. That's why I'm not getting the results,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So,
And that's not to say that you're being lazy. That's to say you're doing all those other things 10 times more than you need to do.
yes.
At a certain time, you go, I want to spend time with my family.
Yeah.
And that to me is more important. And I'm not saying don't spend time with your family. I would argue that that's probably more important anyways.
That's the most, yeah.
Right. But the point is that you've got to recognize that there's always more you can do.
Always more. Rather than sitting around the coffee pot at the office talking about
Exactly.
Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton or
Exactly.
this other nonsense, go out there and do something.
If you and exactly if you like being the guy who likes hanging around the coffee pot and bullshitting, and that's great. But then know that you're probably not the right person to be an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
because entrepreneurship requires a lot of hustle. You're if you're a solo entrepreneur, especially, you have to recognize that you're the garbage man, you're the salesperson, you are the operating person, and you're the CEO. Most people think about the fact that you're the CEO, and that's great, but you're forgetting that all these other pieces also have to happen.
That's right. And
So
this topic we kind of it's a derivative of the other topic we wanted to talk about, which was a DIA wrap up.
right,
And we'll get to that. We'll spend like 1 or 2 minutes on that.
absolutely,
But another thing I've been noticing, and I think it's become more clear to me because I also spend some time, not the majority of my time. I spend some time in the real estate industry as a realtor, right?
mm-hmm.
And I
How's
see
that going?
how it's going good. I mean,
Good.
same thing as here. Massive action leads to massive results. I
Right.
haven't started cold calling expired listings until recently, and what do you know? I've got 3 listing appointments. Like they didn't fall out of the sky. This is how these things happen. But my point is that comparing the real estate industry to the
Yep.
clinical research industry,
Yep.
even the mediocre realtors
Mm-hmm.
would, if they were in the research space, they
Mm-hmm.
would be like top 1% of business development personnel in our space. And I
Right.
think it has something to do in our industry, the clinical research industry. There's a mindset that still prevails where sales or doing anything sales related is looked down upon. And that's
Right.
usually because people here are educated, they see themselves as sort of being above that.
Right.
But you don't, and you've got more degrees than probably 99.9% of people who are watching this.
Possibly.
Yeah.
And I think sales is critical, and it's one of those skill sets that I wish I had. I think more people need to understand how to be more salesy, because I think I see it in the world of drug advertising where everyone gives it such a bad name, and I go, who do you think pays for all this research? Where do you think that money comes from? Someone's got to go out there and sell your product. Someone's got to go out there and say that my drug's out there, and then they might consider prescribing your drug. And if they consider prescribing your drug, then it might get on formulary, or the other way around. Um, either way, it will go in a way where you can then support that effort. I think the pharma industry is the only industry I'm aware of, outside maybe tobacco, where they don't like you advertising. Maybe guns is another one. They don't like you advertising. But the other two, I think, irrespective of your position on guns or tobacco, the fact is that the pharma industry goes out there and saves lives. Specifically, is out there to save lives. And the idea of saying, let's allow people to spend billions of dollars trying to save lives and maybe even fail. But if they do succeed, we don't want you advertising that because we have a slight distaste to the idea of you going outside and trying to promote your product. So I find that really odd. But I think it's a really interesting nuance that you pulled out, which is people tend to think that if you're educated, people will just automatically come to you, and that's
Yeah,
just silly.
it's entitlement.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
So,
So switching gears, going to DIA,
yeah,
last minute here or two
yeah,
minutes.
sure.
You go primarily to get business, right?
Oh yeah, and I mean that for conferences as well. I initially started a long time ago going to these conferences primarily to listen to the talks, and the talks are often, in many cases, excellent.
Hmm.
But I've realized that in many cases these are speakers speaking at a whole different at a couple of different events. The conversation itself, for example, in clinical trials right now, the big hot conversation tends to be around risk-based trials. Another conversation that often happens is centralized monitoring. And these are the hot topics, and every conference you go to will have those topics and discussions and variations of that discussion. If you're looking to do that, great. You're going to listen to some fascinating people talking about fascinating things. But for me, I go to these conferences to meet people. I was really excited this time to potentially have met you. I'm sorry it didn't work out.
Yeah, sorry, and it was right in your neck of the woods in Philly.
It was,
Next year will
but
be a bio.
I'm sure we'll definitely try to do that. The bio's another
San
huge.
Diego.
Is it San Diego?
Yep.
Oh, I'd have to try
That's why I'm going. I have to go.
that. I thought you're LA though. It's still 2 hours
Yeah,
for
I'm in
you.
Orange County. It's like an hour and a half.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
San Diego is amazing. Going to San Diego purely because of San Diego is amazing. Uh, but that's exactly the point, though. Yeah, I don't know if you go to conferences to listen to people, or I just go there to meet people, make good contacts, and you'll realize that depending on which conference you go to, you'll get a different set of contacts, and you have to recognize one of the things when I started was that I would think that anytime I go to any conference, I'll see people who want to hear me, and I will. But then you have to start asking yourself, do I want to go talk to them? So you start filtering. Initially, it was I'll go to any conference.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's become I'll go to any conference if you pay for my costs,
Right.
and if the people who are going to be there are interesting and pertinent to what I do.
But that's only because you've established yourself, right?
Exactly.
Someone starting out, they have to go to all of them. They got to pay for everything. They got to
Right.
go network. Yeah.
And that's the part I think that people have to realize. You have to pay your dues. I get a lot of people going, yeah, I also want to make sure that my costs are paid. Yeah, I can recognize that. However, the fact is, I've been doing this for 8-9 years now,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I paid my dues. And these conference producers, in many cases, are people who are now in many cases friends, and they
Right.
know the value I bring to to the audience.
Mm-hmm.
I'm having impromptu discussions. I'm not doing a canned presentation each time. I'm having interactive conversations, and they're going, I know you can do this consistently. I know I can trust you to know that the audience will love you.
Mm-hmm.
And when that happens, I'm happy to bring you back on. In most cases, at most conferences, a consultant has to pay to be there.
Right. Right. And you speak frequently at Magi, right?
I do speak frequently,
Amongst others.
amongst the several others. Yeah.
Amongst several. And you don't charge, right?
No.
Yeah. So, and you could charge easily. Like
At some of them, absolutely.
your
Absolutely.
time per hour, I mean, you can charge. So
Absolutely.
it's another example of how entitlement's holding some people back.
Right.
Myself included. I used to say, hey, if I don't get paid to speak, why would I do that?
Right.
But now I'm like you. Hey, if they pay for my hotel and my trip,
Right.
I'll
Right.
go. Right.
Right.
So that option is out there. They're always looking for speakers. It's
Hmm.
just a matter of you swallowing your ego
Right.
and going and get. So what if you have to pay for your flight? If
Right.
they're putting you on stage and you have the platform for like an
Right.
hour, that's money well spent. Right.
Right.
In my opinion.
I'll give you a really interesting example that happened to me. I gave a talk about 3 years ago in Berlin. And the
Wow.
only reason I know this is because I think I told you I backpacked around the east coast of the world.
Yeah.
And on the way back, a conference producer said, I'll pay you to go to Berlin, but we need a U.S. speaker to speak there. It was amazing. But the point was, I gave a talk there, and nothing came of it. And I was just like, you know what? It's wasted money, but at least I got to see Berlin. It's great.
Yeah.
I had fun. Day before yesterday, I got an email from a person in France saying, a friend of a friend saw you speak in Berlin a couple of years ago.
Wow, years ago.
Years ago. Would you be available to talk to us a little bit about what we need to do in this specific situation?
Amazing.
And the only reason I can trace it back to this is because he said you gave a talk in Europe, and I know that in the last couple of years that's the talk I've given in Europe, and that's how I drew it back. But recognize that the results you get will
Yeah.
not be immediate.
Yeah. Realtors call that farming, right? They call it farming. You plant your seeds, they're gonna
Yep,
grow. That's what you
yep,
did. You planted
yeah,
seeds in Berlin. 3 years later,
right.
right?
Exactly. And I found that amusing. The other thing I found for me, and this is again, you may find this as well. I have on my desktop, I have a folder with pictures that I use to sort of make myself motivate me, if you will. And one of the pictures I use is the number of times it takes a person to make a sale.
Wow.
Most people stop at one or two because they think that if they aren't interested by communication one or two, they probably aren't interested. I fell into that for about 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
I would think that I'm offering a really good service. I'm offering it at a great price. If they don't communicate to me
Wow.
by option one or two, they aren't interested.
Yeah.
Turns out that it takes me for conversion at least 9 points of contact. 9 points of contact is the same thing as one contact a week for 9 weeks, which is 3 months
With the same person.
with the same person.
This is okay. This just actually is an aha moment for me. So for my consulting business, I actually get a lot of the leads, not surprisingly, from YouTube. So people call, I'll set
Sure.
up teleconferences just like we're having now.
Yeah.
I set up about 10 a week, try to get one client a week out of that, right?
Right.
But and I am. I'm converting at that rate.
Right.
But I'm not doing any follow-ups with the other 9.
There you go.
I'm not doing any. And actually, I was just talking to Chris about this the other day. I said, hey, man, I think we got to get better at following up with some of these other 9 that we're not converting. But
Right.
we've been so busy, we haven't been doing that.
Right.
And we were thinking, hey, if we give them enough time, they're going to eventually come back and ask
That's what I used to
questions.
think too.
They typically don't do that. So I recently have started following up with more, but I think this interview actually, I'm going to create a system where I am forced to do this.
And that's what it comes down to. It's email. 9 points of contact. It could be email. It could be conversations. It could be voicemails. It could be newsletter blast. You have to reach out to them 9 different times at least.
Do you use anything fancy, like any software to keep track of your
You
prospects?
can do it everything from using a CRM. For
Yeah.
those of you who don't know, it's a contact research management system. Oh, I
I
forget
think
about
it's
that.
Contact retention or something like that.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Either way, it's a way where you put in the name of the person or the lead, and you basically track the last time you spoke to them. You can do this via an Excel spreadsheet as well.
What do you
Uh,
use?
I use ACT and
Act?
I use ACT.
ACT.
There's a software out there called ACT.
Is that a
And
Salesforce product or?
no, no. So
Okay.
Salesforce, I looked at Salesforce and I'm sure it works. Most Fortune 500 companies use Salesforce.com. I just didn't want to pay. I hate the new model of everything, which is keep paying monthly forever.
Yeah.
So I totally understand the model, and I'm going to use it for something else that I have, for another business idea that I have. But as a small business owner, I simply couldn't afford that.
Yeah.
So what I use is ACT, and you can
ACT.
actually
I
buy
wrote
their
that down.
product.
Yeah.
There you go. I bought their product. It was like $100 or something like that, and it reminds me. And I can upload. I have about 3,000 contacts on there that I can filter
Wow.
and pull out specifically the people that I want. So when you say farming, I use Mailchimp, for example, for email news blasts.
Yeah.
Every week, I have an email news blast that goes out to specific sets of people. And I make sure that email goes out. And it takes a lot of time. And I have a team that helps me with this.
Yeah.
And then I will have someone reach out to me and I'll speak to them. I'll tell them the kind of value I can add to the system, add to them. I'll tell them about people tend to think of a lawyer as a guy who does contracts. And I get that. I would probably too. But what I land up doing more often than sort of just looking at a contract is adding value in the conversation. So, oh, we're going to open up a clinical trial site. Great. Who are you going to be working with? These ABC people. That's great. Now tell me what value these people add. Well, this guy's my friend. This person is his sister, so we really want to hire her because she really needs a job. And that's when you start going, I totally understand what you're trying to do, but recognize that that money comes from your pocket. And my job is not necessarily to say that that's right or wrong, but my job is often to advise you on things that you could be doing better for yourself. And you can tell me that, Darshan, I just want you to look at the contract and that's all I need. Great, that's fine, no problem. Mm-hmm. But often the value I add is the third party perspective on what you're doing and how that impacts your contract. For example, a sister who's coming on, she really needs a job. She's going to get a job, hopefully. She's going to move somewhere or whatever. Well, maybe when we do an employment contract for her, we don't do it as an employment contract. We do it as an independent contractor with a fixed term. Because if we do it that way, she doesn't feel bad, and you don't have to have that awkward conversation where you're firing her.
Yeah.
But it's that kind of conversation that I start having with people. And I start saying, okay, so you want to bring in this friend. What does he do? He's going to be my salesperson. Great. What kind of sales experience does he have? Well, he worked at Rite Aid for 15 years. Okay. And how does that help you? Well, I think he's going to be great at sales. Okay. So now how are you going to compensate this person? Oh, I'm going to give him $50 a month or $50 a week or whatever it is that you're going to use. And what if he's not successful? Well, I guess I'm going to still give him the $50. Well, how is that useful to you?
Yeah.
So it's having those conversations. They're often very intuitive conversations, but you may want to say, okay, what about instead of giving him $50, we tell him that you will give him $10 for every sale that you convert, or for every sale that he brings in, or for every sale that that is a potential lead that converts, or something like that, where you can actually share the value as well, and then put that into the contract. Each of those is the value add I have to think of, because my job as an attorney is not to just charge you. My job as an attorney is to add value to your business.
Yeah.
And that's why it's very important that you don't think of your attorney, at least, and I'm sure that's true for actually most professions. The more continuity you have with someone, the more they understand your style of working. The more they understand your style of working, they know what you would be comfortable with, what you wouldn't be comfortable with, and taking that path to go down. Mm-hmm. You have to create your core team. I love the concept of the way you work it, Dan, where you say, I have a core team. Here are the 5 people who are always on my team. They know what we're going to do. And each of them has a specific role. It's not my cousin Bob, his sister Sarah. It's great. If Bob and Sarah can demonstrate value, they can absolutely be on my team. But if they can't, I'm sure I'll find them something. I'd rather write them a check to say, thank you, Bob and Sarah. Mm-hmm. But they aren't adding value to what I do.
Right. Yeah, this is great motivation. I think maybe we're on to something. And by the way, we didn't mention lots of other things you do, I do, to generate business, right? Like you write articles for online magazines.
Oh, yeah, tons of them.
Paper
Twitter.
Magazine, like all kinds of Twitter. We didn't even get into Twitter. Snapchat. Right?
Yeah,
I mean,
you're huge on Snapchat.
I've got 3 deals already from Snapchat.
Really?
Yep.
Huh. I gotta talk to you about
6
that.
students and 1 consultant. 1 consulting client. So yeah, and we're just in the infancy. So anyways, we're going to leave Guru Nation with this 29-minute video.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Is that long?
Yeah, but when you like a topic, you can go on for... We can do this for 29 hours, man. We can have one of those telethons where we have people call in and donate money so we keep going. That's a good business idea.
That is another good business idea. I don't know if either one of us wants to do that, though.
Maybe one day. I'd try it once.
Really?
I'd do it for one day, yeah.
I'd do it just to see what would happen. It'd be funny.
That's awesome, Darshan. Thank you very much. Thank you to the Guru Nation. If anyone wants to get a hold of Darshan, I'll have the links, the social links underneath this YouTube video, as well as when it goes on the blog. And we'll turn this one into an audio podcast too, because it's good. So thanks, Darshan. We'll do this again. And anything else you want to add?
No, please stay tuned. I'm going to hopefully have a new a big announcement for everyone soon, so we'll talk about that as well.
Good. We'll do that here. Okay.
Sounds great.
Thank you, Guru Nation. Thank you, Darshan. This is Dan and Darshan from theclinicaltrialsguru.com. Take care.